Welcome to today's webinar, Make the Switch, 10 Reasons Why It's Time to Go Digital, presented by Whip Around. I'm Josh DeLucia with Heavy Duty Trucking, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. I encourage you to ask questions during the webinar at any point, and we will try to address them all. However, if we do not get to yours, don't worry, you'll be contacted by email with a response after the event. Our presenters today are Michael Flournoy, Director of Sales with Whip Around, and Rolando Cruz, Chair of the Safety Committee with the Trucking Association of Massachusetts. Mike has spent the better part of a decade working with fleet operators in North America, looking to improve safety and efficiency through technology. He is a recognized leader in the telematics industry for companies like Fleetmatics and Verizon Connect. He has been at the forefront of the conversations that are shaping the future of transport companies across the country. Rolando brings together significant experience not only from the trucking industry with the Trucking Association of Massachusetts, but also as a senior insurance advisor. He sees firsthand the impact that technology can have on fleet operations and the positive outcomes that come from it. Now, I'll hand it over to Mike.
So what we'll cover today is the 10 reasons why you should eliminate paper inspections, how to turn DVIR and pre-trip inspections into your most powerful process, the clear 5-to-1 ROI of going digital, how to save hours each week by streamlining people and processes, being more profitable, safe, and compliant than ever before, and lastly, how simple, quick, easy it is to implement a digital solution. So, first thing we like to cover, why do we even still have paper? Most things that we do in today's day and age are electronic. Many businesses are still stuck in their ways. I remember being a part of the telematics industry about 12 years ago when GPS tracking was first making its debut, and most people were doing things such as payroll or hours for their guys, the old manual process way, and it was a difficult switch going into electronically doing those sorts of things with GPS tracking. There's been a lot of influence in the recent years. Paper logs are just still prevalent. Perception is that paper is cheap, but have you really gone through and seen what it's costing you? Are there forms that you're purchasing on a regular basis? Are you printing these forms out? Have you really looked at the amount of time that's wasted with the paper process? Compliance is really seen as a bare minimum approach to get by and to avoid violations. But we've seen over and over again, DVIR is not turned in for several days or not done for several days, and then someone trying to scramble and do 2 or 3 days worth of paper forms at one time to turn them in before they're due. And then the last thing that we'll talk about is how the ELD mandate has made its impact on switching from a paper process over to electronic. So, Rolando, I'm curious to hear about some of your thoughts on the paper process and why people still use paper, and kind of get your feedback on some of that as well.
Yeah, Mike, it's funny. 12 years ago, paper DVIR, the functionality was the norm, right? But today, electronic digital space is becoming more prevalent in companies today. It's creating a hybrid situation where companies have to work with digital and they still work with paper. What that does is it creates an issue in how are we tracking these things? People are coming in, they're getting used to working with the digital space, and then the paper process gets missed. So it's an issue in terms of compliance, like you said. Companies are changing to be more efficient, but many companies are stuck in their ways. What you have to do is you got to figure out how are you going to manage that. And one of those ways is changing your entire process, which includes the DVIR process. Now, what I see when I work with clients is how heavily they rely on the drivers to provide proper write-ups with their equipment. Equipment has an issue. They try and write it up on paper. They report it to the company. But who's filing it? How do they track it? It's very difficult. As I review many clients, the process there, how they maintain their records, it's not really trackable. So that's the issue here. Why are they doing that?
You know what's interesting is that you're saying the hybrid piece of people using, electronic processes, but then using paper processes. What I find, and I don't know if this is the same with you, but I meet with customers and clients on a daily basis that have an electronic logging device in these vehicles, but they're still using paper for the pre and post trip, even though their ELD comes with, sort of a built-in DVIR. Do you see that with your clients as well?
Yeah, I see it all the time. It gives a false sense of compliance because the ELD is reporting as it should that the driver is doing a pre-trip inspection. But are they truly doing it? I find they're not. I actually work with clients and I do I survey drivers and I report back to the client and I inform them that this driver got in the truck, turned his key and just left. And then he goes in and he checks that if the driver did a DVIR, it says he did. So it provides a false sense of compliance, and that's the problem with the ELDs today, that it's not allowing the company to truly gauge what's going on within their equipment.
Nice, thanks for that. This next slide, we're talking about why even go digital. Well, it starts with accountability first. One of the things that we hear most before people switch over to a digital solution is there's a disconnect between the driver to the mechanic to the fleet operator. So the driver will say, hey, I've flagged this 7 or 8 times that it needs to be fixed. And the mechanic will say, I've never heard that needs to be fixed. So there's a finger pointing back and forth. At the end of the day, the owner of the operation or the fleet manager, whoever it is, needs to make sure that those issues are taken care of so that the vehicle is not only safe, but it's on the road. So with going digital, Whip Around gives you the ability to connect those 3 people at the same time. So everyone knows, here's an issue, here's when it was told, here's the time, here's a date stamp, everyone is notified. It creates a communication loop between the 3 most important people that are out there. And what we also are able to help our customers with is the age-old issue of pencil whipping. So what is pencil whipping? Well, someone sitting in the cab of a vehicle with a paper DVIR, just check, saying that everything has been checked. But then, a few minutes later, they go down the road and they're pulled over for a headlight being out or a tire not having enough tread, but they've already selected on this piece of paper that everything is good. So really not checking or doing a thorough inspection and or sitting in the cab and just pressing a button that says, here, there are no defects. So my question to you is how can we manage drivers to make sure that they're actually doing a proper inspection? Like how do you do that with a paper solution, and why do you think that's so good with the electronic?
Well, that's a good point. In today's day, nobody really does paper, but the ELDs, it's not pencil whipping. You can call it electric whipping, right? Because that's what they're doing. They're actually going in and they're selecting, yes, I did it. I looked over the vehicle, turning the key and going. So it's not considered pencil whipping anymore because most trucking companies have an electronic ELD. So the same thing that was happening when paper was prevalent, It's happening today with the ELDs. The only problem is that nobody's really looking to see if these drivers are doing it. They're relying on the ELD's telematics, saying, yeah, our guys are doing it. And then when a guy gets into a weigh station, gets pulled in, he gets the violations for the minimal things that should be found during the pre-trip inspection or post-trip inspection. It's it's causing an issue for the company score.
And you know what I hear?
So how does
Go ahead.
So how does now me saying that and saying that the ELD you can just scroll through an ELD? How does Whip Around manage drivers to make sure that they're actually doing a proper pre-trip inspection?
So that's a great question. One of the things that we can do with our app is force the driver to get out of the vehicle in order to complete the inspection. So let's say there are 15 items that you have to go through and do a checkpoint on in order to complete an inspection. You can't press send until you've completed all 15, first of all. You also have to follow a specific order. You can't skip around and go from 1 to 7 to 2 to 9 to 4 to 10. You have to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have control over how the driver does the inspection. But we have a couple of key things that we do where we can force a picture to be taken. So the driver has to get out of the vehicle and take a picture of whatever item it is to prove that they were outside of the vehicle. Most customers will choose headlights. They'll also choose tail lights. So it's a great way to make sure that the driver is outside of that vehicle doing an efficient walk around. Without cutting corners, I'd like to add, because one of the things that our system does is tracks exactly how long the driver takes to do their pre-trip, which is something you definitely can't see from paper. So at the end of an inspection, you can see how long the driver actually took to do it, and it can create a coaching opportunity. The real benefit starts when the driver hits the send button, because then it's alerting people of defects in real time so you can make decisions and keep those vehicles on the road.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers your question there.
Yeah, it did.
Perfect. The only other thing that I'd add is, and just to wrap up on that slide, is that you'll know who hasn't done their DVIR each day, which is very important. With a paper process, if all your pre-trips should be done at 8 a.m., you really don't have any idea if they've been done or if they haven't. But our system will not only show you who's done it, who hasn't done it, but also send you a notification showing you, who's out of compliance, so you know who to reach out to. So just want to make sure I shared that too. Now, the 10 reasons to eliminate paper. So we've covered a couple of these in conversation on the previous slides, but obviously pencil whipping is probably the biggest issue that we're going to eliminate with being on a paper solution. Also photos, the use of compulsory or forced photos. You can have as many of these as you like with Whip Around. So you could require someone to take 20 photos if you'd like. Some of our customers think outside the box with this and will have their drivers take a picture of the cleanliness of their cab to make sure there's no trash in the cab of the vehicle. Whether you've considered it or not, trash in the cab of the vehicle creates a safety issue, because if a bottle or some sort of trash rolls up underneath the gas pedal or brake pedal, it could cause a situation where it could actually create an accident. So some people will force their drivers to take a picture of the cab to show it's clean. Uniformity, so everyone's doing everything the same way. Actually getting these DVIRs turned in. We speak with people all the time who have trucks all over the country or locations all over the country, and people are having to do these DVIRs and then physically going to the post office and mailing them in to a location. But with our system, they click a button and it's all online in the cloud. And being able to give feedback to your drivers is very important. Coaching your drivers to make sure they're doing things the right way. Not only do they feel more involved, but you're doing your job, making sure that people are doing things the way they should be. that takes me to number 6, which is accountability. We see all the time where vehicles will switch who the driver is, right? So I might drive the vehicle today, you might drive it tomorrow. So if I document the condition of the vehicle today and you go drive it tomorrow and bang it into something, it's really clear who had the vehicle, who did the inspection, how the pictures look. So drivers love the fact that, there's accountability. They don't get blamed for things that didn't happen. Compliance, of course. Immediate notifications of defects, which is a huge advantage. I mean, imagine knowing that a tire is bald before it leaves your yard. I can't tell you how many customers have given me horror stories about tires leaving bald and tires blowing out and causing accidents going down the road. Peace of mind knowing you're in compliance, and also just powerful reporting to uncover any sort of inefficiencies. Question to you, Rolando, since you've been in the business for a very long time, what is the new norm for processes with new drivers entering the transportation field for the first time?
That's a great question. Retention is a huge issue for trucking companies. It costs a lot of money to hire a driver. It costs a lot of money to train a driver. So you bring a new driver into your company. What's the expectation? Most schools they train drivers using an electronic ELD. They train everything in digital, and then they come to a company and there's a paper process. That's an issue. You got the new drivers coming on board. They have that digital mindset. So if you look at trying to hire a driver that's going to stick with you for a long time, you need to think about, what are you offering? Are you offering great equipment? But then what are the processes? The process is a huge deal. If you have a driver that doesn't want to do paper, he's not going to stick around. That's a fact. But I wanted to touch base on the camera issue because I thought that so you have a guy who wants to take a picture, or he's required to take a picture. What prevents him from using a past photo in his phone? How can you prevent a guy from doing that?
That's a great question, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Our app prevents access to the camera gallery. So when your driver gets to a point where he has to take a photo of something like the headlights or the taillights, when they go to take that photo, they can't access previous photos. So you 100% know that picture that was taken at that very time.
Okay, all right. Because that was the question of mine: is how can you really manage the driver if you're having him send over the same picture every day?
Yeah, that can't happen the way that the app is designed. But I'm glad you brought that up because it is asked quite a bit. Right now, if you're listening, we'd like to take a quick second and have just a quick flash poll to see if you've evaluated, a paper solution recently. So I'd like to send that out very quick. If you wouldn't mind, if you're listening, just to answer that question. We'll give a few seconds here. Looks like we've got some people that have definitely evaluated the solution, some that haven't. As it sits right now, we're about half and half. Very interesting. Thank you for those of you who participated. All right, let's move right along. Fully customizable. So, we use the term fully customizable quite a bit, but I think it's a underestimated value. Most people, when they come to whip around, think that it's just a pre-trip or a post-trip, but there are so many other things that our system can eliminate paper with. One example is an accident report. And I find that this one's a really big issue for our customers. Say, for example, you got a driver driving down the road, unfortunate series of events happen, he gets into a fender bender and has to document that accident, right? I'm sure most people have some sort of accident form for their drivers. Well, without an electronic solution, you probably have a camera in the glove box that's been sitting there for 6 or 7 years and may or may not work. Or you have some sort of paper form that the driver is supposed to fill out. Well, our customers tell us that either the form doesn't get filled out when it's supposed to, so it'll get filled out once the driver's back at the office, or it will be missing key pieces of information like person's driver's license number or the report number or the police officer or something to that effect. So one of the things that we do for most all of our customers is allow them the ability to do additional forms outside of just a pre or post trip, right? So the accident form, driver opens it up on his app. You know, he's nervous, he's shaking. Well, because he can't skip around or miss anything, he has to go through A through Z. You get a complete report. And again, with forced photos, you can have them take a picture of the damage to your vehicle, the damage to the other vehicle, copy of the driver's license, copy of the insurance, paperwork. So now you get this entire report complete with all the details that you need. I've seen that be a game changer for a lot of my companies that I work with. But there's also a lot of other forms out there maybe that I'm not thinking of. So I wanted to ask you, what type of forms do you see people ordering online other than just a DVIR?
Well, I mean, JJ Keller has a huge volume of forms. You know, they have hazmat, forms. The books, the DVIR, there's specialized forms that you can order from them that I believe Whip Around can create as well. So, I mean, JJ Keller's been around for a long time, so they probably have hundreds of forms. So that really is, they're a great resource if you want to stay with paper, because, they've been around the business for many years. But the fact of the matter is digital space is here and it ain't going anywhere. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you had any top forms that you saw on a regular basis. I mean, we hear about OSHA forms, job safety analysis forms, and now we've even incorporated a couple of different ones, a truck sanitization form. So that way, you can make sure that your truck's been sanitized with everything that's going on with COVID in our country. So,
right.
Just wanted to mention out there that it's not just about the DVIR, it's about, eliminating several different things that you may do on paper out there in one shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is huge right here for me personally. Added visibility, it's almost like operating in the dark if you're doing something on paper. And I remember if you compare sort of doing things the paper route 20 years ago to what you do electronically now, it's like, would you jump in a truck and drive across country with a map book right now? I mean, probably not. We think about how much technology has brought us forward, and you get to a point where you think, well, that just sounds crazy. Why would we do something that's so outdated, right? So the visibility piece for me is absolutely huge. Having all this information anywhere at any time. Imagine not being at your office and having to locate some sort of specific record. Like, how would you do it? With Whip Around, right, you can sign on to anywhere and just pull it up, download it to a PDF in seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question for you, though. Something that was interesting to me is, explain to me more about that feedback loop. How do you connect the three most important people involved in a defect.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely go through that. Well, when the driver opens the app and they're going through their inspection, their thorough whip around of the vehicle, and they find that something is wrong. Let's say there's a taillight out or a turn signal or a tire is balding, something like that. They're required to either take a picture or enter a comment. So they have to tell you something. They just can't check that something's wrong with it. And you're going to definitely get more information immediately. But as soon as that happens, it's going to send an email to whoever you've designated that needs to be alerted. So that might be a mechanic, that might be the fleet manager, it might be an operations manager, it might be dispatch, it might be all of the above. So there's going to be a real-time notification that there was something wrong with the vehicle. From the computer, whoever is receiving that notification can then mark it in progress, put a comment saying, hey, I've received this issue from you, and we're going to work to get this fixed. And the driver is able to see that comment from the app when they go to inspect the vehicle again. So they know that people are seeing it and they're commenting and it's being worked on. And then obviously our administrators can see everything. So they're seeing the driver, create the issue. They're seeing the mechanic comment on it, and they're seeing how that plays out. There's no longer this age-old issue of, the driver didn't tell me that there's an issue with the vehicle, and then the driver saying, yes, I've told the mechanic 10 times that this needs to be fixed. So there's no more finger pointing with that. And I put myself in the shoes of a mechanic quite often and just wonder, if you're doing a pre-trip and a post-trip every day on, let's just say 50 vehicles, that's 100 pieces of paper that a mechanic would have to look through and almost grade 100 pieces of paper every single day and see if any of them had any issues. But with the digital solution, you could log into the dashboard, click on faults, and see everything right there that's been flagged by your team. So just imagine how much time that puts back in, back in people's lives. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It looks like we. Go ahead. Did I lose you there, Rolando?
No, I'm here.
Thought I lost you. Looks like we have a question. How well does this integrate with current maintenance softwares? Shop manager gets an alert or API with current platforms. So we definitely integrate with some companies that we'll talk about at the end. But for example, one of the companies that we work with is RTA. They're a maintenance software. And it essentially, when a driver creates an issue from the app, we've built the integration to essentially open up a work order inside of RTA so that both systems work well together. However, we do have an open API. So, if someone wanted to build a one-off with a maintenance software that they use, we could definitely, help facilitate that. Thanks, Aaron, for your question.
So confidence in compliance, record and retention and audit preparedness, automatic file storage in the cloud, the importance of audit preparedness, and preparing for a new age of auditors. So that's important because the new age of auditors, they're young guys. They're coming from a digital space in terms of training. I speak to a lot of state police commanders. Their training process, all of their equipment, it's all digital. When the FMCSA, everything is digital. They've created all these different programs for the industry. It's all digital. The Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, the ELD mandate, it's all digital. So when they come to an office and they're going to conduct an audit, they're expecting something digital, right? They expect it to be done efficiently and quickly. The FMCSA, they have a lot of companies to go through. They don't want to spend 8 hours doing an audit. It's not going to happen. It's just they'll probably reschedule. They'll have issues with the company. It has to be something efficient for them to come into the office. Now, in insurance, what happens if you're not really in compliance? What happens? What's the cost? What's the result? Well, you have issues with your condition rating, right? If an auditor sees that you're not prepared, you don't have proper paperwork in order, or you're missing paperwork, they can just say, we're going to put you in conditional because you're not prepared, you don't have the paperwork in place, and we'll come back and we'll see you in a year or so. Then you have your business relationships. They're looking at a company's status with the CSA too. That's one of the main factors of whether I'm going to do business with you, right? So that's an issue as well. The ease of reporting, exception reports, reminders, quick governing reporting, right? So the confidence and compliance, it's easy for managers to access when they need it, other than scrambling to find paperwork documents, right? So if you got to look for something during an audit, and it takes you a while to look for it, it just seems like you don't have your things in order. You got to have your house in order, especially during an audit. So you got admin personnel. They're filing. They're saying to their managers they're filing the paperwork. Managers are relying on them, but during inspections, with paper, it's evident that they're not doing it. So it's a difficult issue when you're dealing with paper versus digital.
I can imagine that could be an uncomfortable thing to go through.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. If you're a manager relying on your team to make sure things are done, because managers don't have, you're trusting in your team to make sure that your paperwork is in order, and then you go and you look for the stuff and get prepared for the audit, and nothing's there. You know, that's a tough space. But prior to the audit, if you have Whoop around, all you got to do is pull it up right off the system, right off the cloud.
That's awesome. Thanks for that. Very insightful. The common excuses, I guess, that we run into on a regular basis of, why we're not going to go digital are here. So I just wanted to kind of glaze over each one of them to make sure that anyone listening now or later knows that they're not real issues. So the first is a difficult implementation. Legitimately, if someone called me today and had their vehicle list and their driver's list in hand in some sort of Excel format and emailed it over to me, I could set them up an account, push out a text message to all the phones, to all the drivers, and they could walk out in 20 or 30 minutes and start doing inspections electronically, and it couldn't be easier. Now, we do provide training, we do provide setup, we do all these sorts of things, but the implementation is not hard. And the way we built the app, like, you simply can't mess it up. It tells you, take a photo. Is this good? Yes or no. So as far as the implementation piece goes, like, it's a non-issue. With Whip Around, we don't have any sort of long-term contract. It's a month-to-month subscription. So in the event it doesn't work, it wouldn't work for you for longer than a month, right? So you're not tied down into some sort of long-term contract that you don't know if it's going to work or not. As far as the installation or hardware downtime, there is none. If you've got a tablet or you've got a phone, we can send a link out to it, a magic link that logs you right in. So nothing has to happen with that vehicle, and your driver could be anywhere on the earth. Now, the last two are special to me. My ELD has a DVIR. I think we've covered that well in the previous slides, but that ELD DVIR has essentially made it even easier for someone not to do a thorough inspection. And there are several other things that you don't get with a DVIR that's built into a ELD. In most cases, you can't take pictures. In most cases, you don't get a real-time alert. I was speaking with someone earlier today that told me that he's got to go in and run reports and actually ask the ELD system if there's been an issue. So he's not getting a real-time alert. He's not getting pictures. Doesn't know if they're being pencil whipped. Doesn't know if the drivers are doing them. There's several different things that a solution like ours fixes with the standard DVR that you just kind of get for free because you signed up with an ELD. And then the last thing is cost. If most people out there are running an ELD but also doing a paper inspection, there's a cost associated with that paper. Most people are paying $5, $6, $7 a month per paper booklet, and the cost of whip around is comparable to what you're already spending in paper, and that's the reason why we're growing at such the rate that we are. So I just wanted to make sure that we covered that. As far as implementation, did you have any specific questions, Rolando?
Well, I actually had 2 clients that started with whip around, and I can just verify what you said. It's a very easy process. There were no issues. The support during the initial phase of becoming familiar with the program is exceptional. So, and they're still active and they're loving it. The drivers are loving it. That's another misconception of the trucking industry is drivers don't like change. They don't like the digital space. They'd rather stay with the old, but old is paper now. You give a driver a digital option, it might be a learning curve in the beginning, but they'll flock right to it because it's so easy and manageable. And the accountability is there because that's another issue that drivers have. Mechanics have an accountability issue, but so do the drivers. Drivers put it on the DVIR, they get in the next day, and the truck's still damaged, or the truck still had the same issue from before. So drivers really love whip around because the accountability is there. So now they can show that they wrote it up, and they can verify it on their app. So I think that it's a really good option for companies, and from my experience, it's been an easy process.
Thanks for that, Rolando. And don't forget about the fact that switching to a digital solution is better for our environment. We talk so much about our environment on a daily basis. I mean, everything you hear about is paying attention to the changes that we're going through environmentally. You're eliminating paper. You're eliminating the shipping of the paper. You're eliminating storage. I mean, I have some customers, depending on what industry they're in, they've got to keep paper forms up to 5 years. Like if you're in a medical transportation field, there's some things they got to keep for 5 years. Imagine doing a paper form every single day and having to keep that for that long. It's just so such an outdated way of doing things. So we're excited about being able to provide a digital, solution for that. So, definitely wanted to make sure that we talked about that environmental benefit on this chat here.
Excellent. So a streamlined maintenance process. I think this is very cool how Whip Around can connect suppliers to your shop, right? So let's say you have a driver who gets into an issue where he needs a repair on the road. You can actually, is this true, Mike? You can connect a supplier into the whip around process so that they can actually show the process to the team.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Right. And so I thought that was really cool because that situation actually happened with one of my clients, and I have limited experience with it, but when they told me that they were able to to work with an outside vendor who has nothing to do with the company and include them into whip around to show that they repaired an issue, signed off on the DVIR, and not being part of the company. I think that's valuable, because now when the driver, let's say something happens with that repair down the road, and the driver gets into an accident, they can show that, hey, it was done by a licensed repair shop. Here's their signing off of the repair, so they can now hold the people who are in charge of investigating the accident can hold the people who did the repair accountable. So that's really important.
Yeah, that's very accurate. And we work with a lot of companies that will use, Ryder or Penske, for their outside, maintenance and keeping up with their vehicles. And you're absolutely right. If someone, manages to find a defect, we can have that defect route to anyone outside the organization, so they know that the vehicle is going to be showing up soon for service. And we've found that we've been able to significantly reduce the downtime of them waiting to get it fixed. So that's 100% right. We did have a question submitted about the initial feedback from drivers, and I wanted to make sure we acknowledge that. It's a great question. We actually have a video that I'd like to play now that I think will really help address that question. So if we could go ahead and play the video.
My name is Sean Aquaro. I'm the Central Equipment Manager for Pike Industries and Ready Mix Companies. My role in the company is to make sure the communication between the equipment division, the operations, is as smooth as it possibly can. Our fleet comprises of pavers, bulldozers, excavators, pickups, mixers. We have to keep our trucks up to 100% compliant. We don't want to have any accidents. Yeah, before whip around, it would take days before you got the information to fix the problem. Whip around has given us, from the safety side, real-time information.
So my name's Dave Geyer. I'm the dispatch manager and customer service manager here at Ready Mix Companies. Part of CRH, we are the largest supplier of building materials in the world. Safety is the #1 policy. We want our drivers to go home the way they came to work. What Whip Around does for us is definitely supports our safety policies in that manner, right? The drivers are getting what they didn't get before, and that's that communication with the maintenance department. It definitely eliminates a lot of the problems that we've dealt with for years, and brings a great value, I think, to CRH and keeping our drivers safe, keeping our trucks on the road.
My name's Mike Rosignol. I'm a driver trainer for Ready Mix Company, CRH. Previously, we've tried several different apps before, but we had a lot of headaches and issues with those apps in the past that made it really difficult for the drivers to complete their pre- and post-trip inspections. So some of the key benefits that we found with the Whip Around app is the communication piece between us as drivers and our mechanics. In the past, when we'd write up an inspection report and we'd have issues with our truck, but we never really knew when the problem was going to be addressed. What I like about the Whip Around app is I can go ahead and fill out an inspection report, and that day I can actually go back in and I can see the progress that the mechanic has made. And I think that's a huge value as a driver to know exactly when your issues will be fixed.
The drivers are getting what they didn't get before, and that's that communication.
There's literally no possible way that this app could be any easier.
So hopefully that helped answer the question that was asked before about, is it easy for the drivers? We get our best feedback from our drivers about how easy it is to use and about how it's simple. And to understand, who our typical driver is, it would be just like any other, driver that's on anybody's team that's listening. I mean, the driver profile is pretty standard across the board. It does range here or there, but it's incredibly easy to use, and hopefully that answered that question. So the last thing here we'd like to just talk about is the ROI of digital over paper. In most cases, people look at just the cost of the paper form and the cost of whip around, which, just to clear up any misconfusions, are very comparable. But it's really about the amount of time that is spent with filing, with the driver having to do the paper form and walk the paper form in and walk back. You know, you think about just those few minutes a day per driver, twice a day for an entire year, and you think about that time added up that could have put them back on the road. You think about the time that you're spending looking over 100 pieces of paper to see which one had an issue from your mechanic. You think about the time you spend filing it. You think about the time that the mechanic could be spent, you know, actually doing work on these vehicles or moving on to the next thing rather than looking through paper. And the ROI is completely significantly bigger, you know, if you put those things into your thought process of how, you know, electronic is going to really save. You know, depending on your fleet size, it's at least 5 to 1, but we have seen a significant ROIs that would be 20 to 1, depending on, you know, how much time is actually spent, how thorough you're being with your paper forms. It's exactly that sort of ROI. So the more thorough you are with your paper, the more it's going to save you to switch to digital. So I just want to touch on that real quick as well. And then lastly, just a couple of integration partners that we have. Two of the two ELD GPS tracking companies that we partner with as of right now are Geotab and Verizon Connect. There are also a couple other partners, you know, like RTA and a few other specific ones that, you know, if folks want to learn a little bit more about, definitely reach out and we can help out with that too.
Yeah, Mike, I wanted to touch base on the ROI issue as well. The issue with having paper compared to the digital space is the lag of the report time. So if you look at a driver on the road, he's running into an issue on the road, he gets back to his shop and turns in that paperwork. It's 6 o'clock at night, the shop's gone home, and now he has to wait for the morning for the shop to get in. They got to order parts. Sometimes parts takes a couple of days. So you have downtime, which can cost a company $500 to $800 per day, depending on, you know, what the company does. So you look at that point. Then you have in today's environment, paper doesn't have a place because of that point in itself. The bottom line for a trucking company is so thin, you can't afford having a truck sitting. That's an important issue.
Yeah, that's a good call out for sure. Quick recap is, and this is just summarizing the entire presentation, you know, you're going to be able to improve your compliance dramatically. And also with your compliance, the accountability piece is going to go through the roof, right? Knowing people actually are doing the inspections and knowing when defects are flagged and knowing, you know, who's seen them, so on and so forth. Better maintenance processes, making sure vehicles stay on the road, because to your point, one goes down, costs you a lot of money. The same process can also supplement the driver wellness and maintenance reminders in addition to that too. You know, so just having that flexibility to create custom forms and workflows for any sort of asset. So this could be trailers. I noticed that someone asked a question a few minutes ago about if we'll be launching a product to do BIT or DOT inspections. And I mean, to answer that, we can create an inspection for anything. You know, we can do an inspection for a piece of equipment. We can do an inspection for a trailer. We can do inspection for a vehicle. I've got customers that inspect job sites and porta potties and containers. I mean, you name it, we can create an inspection for it. So, you know, depending on what you're looking for, you know, we're not just bound by of vehicle inspection. We do much more than that. Clear ROI, and then in the event someone wants to put their hands on it, we can get them set up for a free use of our software in just a matter of 10 minutes or so. So we make it very, very easy for anyone to give this thing a run and see how simple it'll be for their business. So couple other questions. I think we can run through this real quickly. And if anyone out there listening has any others, feel free to chuck them in there. Cost of the product is asked by Fred Grange. The cost of the product is based on fleet size, but we normally average, and this would depend on, in the event you want to do inspection and the maintenance piece. So that would be an answer that we'd have to know. But for the maintenance or the inspection piece alone, we're right around $6 a month per vehicle. So it's very comparable to what you'd pay for, a paper form. We answered the one about the bit DOT inspections. Did you have something to add to that, Rolando?
There was another question that it's asking, how would our mechanics benefit from this type of solution?
Yeah, so I know that we talked a little bit about it before, but in a typical situation, there's, again, if you've got 50 vehicles doing a pre-trip and post-trip, that's 100 pieces of paper someone has to look through a day. So you eliminate that first and foremost. You also give the mechanic, empower the mechanic through our mobile app to be able to manage faults right from their smart device. So if they're in the garage and they fix something on a vehicle, they could open their app up and mark it fixed, and it's immediately cleared out of the system, and then everyone will be notified that it's been done. So we speed them up. We make their life easier. Do you offer? Go ahead.
And I think another point is that the shop managers can assign the issues ahead of time to kind of keep the flow of the shop moving.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. Do you offer free trial? Yes, we do. Real simple. If anyone wants to whip around a free trial, we 100% can take care of that and give you the ability to test it out. What advantages does this have over paper in the event of an audit? Again, something that probably was covered throughout the presentation, but if you're in an audit, how long is it going to take you to identify or to find an inspection from 70 days ago on 3 vehicles? Because that's what happens. Your driver leaves the office and they say that everything's fine with the vehicle. They get pulled over, it's not fine. All of a sudden, you got DOT knocking at your door in a couple months trying to do an audit to see if you took care of it, and they're going to ask you to locate, these specific forms. And are you going to be able to locate them? Well, with paper, maybe not, but with whip around in a matter of seconds, you could pull it up, and you're not sitting there sweating bullets and wondering if it was done or not. So hopefully that answers the question. Is whip around compliant? Yes, we are fully compliant, and in addition to that, we capture all 3 signatures required to be compliant. So we capture the driver signing off on the previous inspection. We capture the signature of the driver at the end of his inspection, and we also capture the signature of the mechanic when something is fixed. Do you integrate with Centaurus or Square Rigger? At this time, the answer will be no. I'm not familiar with either one of those softwares. However, we do have an open API, and it's something that we can take a look at on a case-by-case basis. Is there an implementation with the TransFlow app? Again, that would be not at this time, but not saying that it's something that we couldn't take a look at. Where do you have more issues, with drivers or with management? That's an interesting one. So I really don't know what we're meaning by where we have more issues. I'd like a little bit more insight on that, if it's meaning during implementation or just usage or what.
I can speak on that a little bit. I know during the implementation, it was easy for the drivers. They download the app. All the equipment is there. It's very easy for them. Management, it's a little bit more cumbersome because they're managing it. So if you look at it that way, it's a little bit more difficult for the management, but it's not difficult, but more difficult, you know. Now, in terms of operating the system, I haven't heard anything where it's difficult. So I don't know if that question is even relevant.
Yeah, if it was difficult, people wouldn't be doing it. I can assure you that.
Right.
It's got to be easy. It's got to be easy for the drivers and easy for the managers, or else people wouldn't be doing it. So, and again, since we offer a way to try it out, you can always try it out for free. Last question: does the cost per month include cloud or portal use? The cost per month includes everything. So all the storage is included. And then the last question that I'd like to cover is, there are many solutions that do what we claim to do. What makes us different? If you Google whip around reviews, you can read for a very long time about our customer reviews on how easy our product is to use and how incredible our customer service is. Our platform is simple. It's well thought out, and there's a couple things that are unique to us, like the force picture with no camera access, the way we control the driver going through the inspection, and our customer service. So if you would like to see what makes us different, I just encourage anyone to reach out, and we could set you up with a free trial. So I think that covers it.
Yeah, that's all the time that we have for today. But for anyone who asked a question that wasn't answered, Whip Around will be following up via email to answer your questions individually. We hope that you all enjoyed today's webinar. I want to again thank Michael Flournoy and Rolando Cruz and Whip Around for today's presentation. I also want to mention that an on-demand version of this webinar will be available on the Heavy Duty Trucking website at truckinginfo.com/webinars. Thank you and have a great day.